You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we're going to be doing lots of politics today. We're going to take the mayor's race for the city of Chicago. You've been seeing some of this. You know, you saw my last show, I gave a little discourse handicapping maybe the top 5 candidates. There are about 10. And a little discourse on each. And you know, the others can win as well. I'm not saying they're not. That's as of this moment, like as of August 16th, 2018. And last week that was as of August 9th. Top as of then. You know, in terms of name recognition, in terms of expecting to have a certain amount of money to get their message out, to be competitive, to have certain background, experience, whatever. The whole gestalt is my guess. Man, I'm not perfect. My guess as to who the winner would come from those 5, from Rahm or the 4 others. But, you know, there could be, as we've said, a disruptor in there, like Neil Solis Griffin. There could be a guy like Troy LaRaviere who just like pops in there, you know. I mean, Troy's like the head of the Principals and Teachers Association. He's been a teacher for a long time, a principal, and so got a lot of feel for the city. Man, the guy, when he was here, he took us back through slavery. That's a bit unusual. You know, for us to be doing that kind of discussion. And Dorothy Brown, you know, she's been elected 4 times, or 5, who can even remember, Circuit Court of Cook County clerk, came in 2000, so she's there 4.5 terms. So she has, as she says, proven track record. She knows how to get votes. And then there's Dr. Willie Wilson, who knows how to get votes, and he got 10% last time, which is okay for a guy first time running for office. A guy with a 7th grade education, self-made millionaire, you know. I mean, some people go and they get their first job at McDonald's and that's it. Willie went and got his first job mopping floors at McDonald's, and then before you knew it, he owned 5 franchises. And then he had a $60 million medical supplies, cleaning supplies company. He said, the man says, I've hired hundreds of thousands of people. Does that guy know something about running the city of Chicago? We don't have any favorites here. We challenge people, we bring them on, we hope they all show up, and you decide. We discuss, you decide. Paul Vallis. Paul's been here. He'll be back, I hope, in a few weeks. Paul and I go back to 2001 when he was running for governor in the Democratic primary. He came within 1 or 2 points of beating Rod Blagojevich, okay? He was number 2 in a 3-person Democratic primary. Had he won that, he probably would have won the general election. No Rod Blagojevich for the last, you know, Rod was there for 6 years until he got arrested. You know, so no Rod, that would have been Paul Vallis. Just think of how different history would be. 2 points, that's all. So when we talk about the mayor's race, think how different going forward things could be depending on who wins. It's not just like a horse race. It's not just about who gets the most money. It's not just like, does Rahm, okay, is Amy the first lady, his wife? Okay, it's more than that. It's way, way more than that. It's that kid whose parents may have a single mom earning, and the family income is $20,000, and he is 4 years old, and his sister's 5, and they're going off to school into pre-K or first grade, and they're going to a neighborhood school, traditional neighborhood school, or are they able to see there's a school maybe a mile or 2 away where they're going to struggle and their mom to get there, and they think it's better? Or there's a thing called a charter school that gives them a choice, and they have many fewer rules, and they think they can do better. And you know, maybe it's the University of Chicago Charter School. Maybe it's the director, Tanya Howell, who we've had here. The woman who says, hey, you don't say, if I go to college. When you come to this school and you're 4 years old, you start saying, when I go to college, okay? That makes a difference, they've found. High expectations make a difference. People who want to learn how to read in number 4, and people who want to teach them, doesn't matter that there are no books in the house. Doesn't matter that there's not a parent verbalizing. They can do it. Yeah, they can do it. They've shown they can do it, okay? That's what's at stake here. This is not about Jeff Berkowitz, much as I like to make it about me, or about Rahm Emanuel, or about Lori Lightfoot. Oh no, Lori tells us she went to a neighborhood school, different area, different state when she grew up, and how strong that was as a factor in her life. And she ended up at the University of Chicago Law School, and she became a federal prosecutor, and she became somebody who people go to when they're putting together a panel, as they did recently for the City Club of Chicago, on understanding about police misconduct, understanding about the institutional changes that have occurred here in Chicago in terms of how police conduct is reviewed and how decisions are made whether there should be a prosecution. That's who she became. You know, there's some people who say, oh no, Lori's too corporate. That's like, what does that even mean? But seriously, I've heard that. And then there's some people who say she's not progressive enough. Like, what does that even mean? How progressive do you have to be mayor in Chicago? So we'd like to hear from Lori here. She said she's too busy, but we're always upbeat. We're always hopeful there'll be a change. And Lori, this is a public invitation to remind you, we'd like to have you here. We'll treat you as fair as everybody else. And more importantly, your potential voters would like to see you. They'd like to see you challenged. We will do that, but fairly. And guess what? We're going to do that when Paul Vallas shows up. We scheduled Gary McCarthy for next week. We'll do that when Gary's here. We're talking about having Rahm here. We don't have a horse in this race, except I would like to make it so more kids who are a minority, and they're 80% minority in CPS, I would like to make it so more of those kids learn how to read at grade level. Some people say it's only 30% now. Some say charters on average outperform that, but they don't do 90%. We want to get it to that number, okay? We want to see improvement, steady improvement. It hasn't really gone up, is my contention. And that's what it's about. Because if kids can read, they can do anything. They can go anywhere. They can get out of the gang. They can turn down the gang. They can figure out how to cross gang lines and be safe, okay? It ain't easy. None of this is easy. If there's a candidate for mayor who comes on this show and says running the city of Chicago is easy and he or she can solve the crime problem, you know, like the weekend of August 2nd, which we haven't talked about, when I guess it's August 4th and 5th, and you had at one point 63 shootings in 60 hours and 12 fatalities, and then it went up to 74 shootings one weekend. And when I said to some people, whose views I value, I said, well, we need to get people who think about how to solve those problems in the short run as well as in the long run. And this person who lives in that area said to me, well, do you think people really want to solve that problem? The people with the power. Are there corrupt police? Are there corrupt police who arrest people and confiscate guns and drugs and ended up selling them back to the people they confiscated from? Does that really happen? Are there people who know who are committing murders and look the other way and are get paid? I thought most of that had stopped. I know we had Gray Lord and we had all sorts of criminal people in the law enforcement area and police and in judges and so forth. Naive me, I guess. I thought that had stopped. Other people say, you know, there's so much of it like you've heard of the military-industrial complex. There's a like judicial law enforcement complex who kind of make money out of the system of having a certain amount of crime. And especially the, you know, say crime in Chicago, we're talking in terms of shootings and violence and murders, mostly on the south and west side. Not so much on the north side, there's some, but mostly on the south and west side. And some people say there are people who have a vested interest in keeping that crime going. I can't believe that, I don't believe it, but I could be wrong. I think most of the people that I know who are in that system are trying to solve the problem. And they realize if they solve the problem and they lose their job, they can get another job. Call me naive, call me old-fashioned, but I differ from people on solutions, but I just generally don't question the sincerity of their motives, okay? People can disagree without becoming disagreeable. Okay, so that's kind of a long way of saying, well, a long way of saying we've covered a lot, so we're not going to go through it right at the moment. We've covered a lot the violence in Chicago in the last few weeks and before with the candidates. We've covered a lot the whole issue of rapes of adults, of CPS students. Terrible, terrible thing. That ain't over, folks. Our discussions of that ain't over. We covered that. We haven't covered the student on student, special ed on special ed student, violence and rape and so forth. Cover that. We've mentioned the spiking of crime, of murders and shootings that occurred in 2016. We haven't mentioned so much that murders and shootings were going down in 2013, 2014, 2015, I think, when Gary McCarthy was brought in by Rahm Emanuel. But then Gary McCarthy was fired, and then it could be spurious correlation, 2016, crime, murders, shootings in the south and west side especially seemed to take a sharp turn up, came back down but not completely in 2017, and has gone up and down this year. So what is that about? The short point is too many murders, way too many. Look, one murder's not good. But when you have Chicago having doubled the volume or number of murders and shootings that New York and Los Angeles has, and they're comparable, if not larger populations, why? That's a good question to ask. You know, Rahm, come on the show. We'd like you to answer that. Gary McCarthy will be here soon. I'm sure we'll get an answer from Gary. And if it went up sharply in 2016, Gary, how do we solve that? I'm sure he's going to tell us. And we'd like to hear about Rahm. And if Rahm says this is what you do, I guess we turn to Rahm and say, well, why didn't you do it in the last few years when you were there? You know, 2016 came and went. We're now in 2018. So, you know, and Paul Vallis is known as Mr. Education. We got a few questions for him. So, and today what we're turning to is the fiscal issues, because we haven't talked so much about the fiscal issues. You know, our candidates aren't even sure what the budget is. Is it 10 billion? Yeah, I think it's 10 billion. I think if you count grants, $10 billion, that's a lot of money for a budget. And that doesn't count CPS. CPS is kind of like, Chicago Public School is like a separate little thing. I mean, of course the mayor runs CPS because the mayor appoints the school board. And these people have not been known for their independence. I don't know technically the law, but I'm pretty sure it is. If Rahm appoints you and he doesn't like what you're doing, I think he gets you out of there pretty soon. Does somebody say, no, you can't fire me and I'll take you to, I don't know. That never seems to happen. So even though CPS is a separate budget, and people don't know that, and there's confusion, you kind of try to find this stuff out. It just is not so easy. But it appears the current budget for CPS, counting capital projects, is about $7.6 billion with a B, 7.6. Some would say it's 7 billion, seems to be a confusion. And the operating cost seems to be about 6.4, maybe 6.2 billion, somewhere around there. And it went up in this last year, or its proposal, I guess, going forward for the next year, is to go up by 20%. 20%. I thought these were tough times. You know, I don't know what the projected increase or decrease for CPS is. We won't know until the official date of October 20, but I'm guessing it goes down by a point or two, or maybe up by a point, 1 point, not 20. Because in 2000 or so, we had 430,000 students in CPS, and now in 2018 we have 371,000. So it's gone down by about, I don't know, gone down by 60,000. That's about 15%. Some would say 20%. I don't know. Depends how you do math. The point is CPS is going down, down, down in enrollment, and their costs are going up, up, up. Median salary for teachers there about 70,000. This last thing has like a 1% increase in teachers, but I don't know, 13, 15% increase in administrators. WTF, people keep talking about the classroom, seriously? And I want to know from Gary McCarthy what he thinks. Do I have that statistic right? I want to know from Paul Vallis, do I have that statistic right? Because there's a tendency when people run for office to say, as long as we spend it on education, it doesn't matter. I don't necessarily go along with that. It's important, what do you get for the spending on education? As we started, are kids learning how to read when they're 4 years old, when they're 5, and when they were testing minorities in CPS, and do we find 25, 30%, if we really do the tests right, read at grade level? What about the 70% who don't read at grade level? And can we just keep saying, keep spending, no matter what you spend, you know, 15,000 a kid, 16, whatever, $1 billion capital, well, we're going to have new schools. Wait a second though, we've just been closing schools. We have too many schools, too much space. We have schools that had 1,000 capacity, but only 200 students. That was inefficient, also unsafe. And there's people said they shouldn't have closed any of those schools. Okay, it's like you have a downturn, you know, people are no longer buying horse and buggies, okay? They're buying cars. If the government was running it, we'd keep the horse and buggy makers in place because there's never any change. Nothing goes down, it just goes up. I mean, seriously. So we need people to talk about those things. And this $10 billion bond sale that wirepoints.com has written about, you can read about it, go to wirepoints.com. It's a good little think tank. They take a contra view to the establishment view that you often see, especially by the so-called reporters, who are more opinion writers. I'm not taking a war on the media, I'm part of it, but really, the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times would benefit from having people. I would go in there and I would just give all the reporters a course in basic economics. Yeah, I'm volunteering to do this to you for the publisher of the Sun-Times and the Tribune. Not for your editorial writers. Sometimes editorial writers could benefit from this as well. I think the Tribune editorial writers have it. I'm giving you the principles of economics for the reporters, okay? That would be so, so effective if these reporters knew basic micro and macro economics. Okay, so there's a $10 billion bond sale. And Rahm is pushing this. Because he says the city pensions are underfunded. 25%, I'd like to get it up to 50%. So he wants to sell $10 billion in bonds, take the money that that they got from the bond buyers and put it into the pensions. Okay, and won't that be good? Well, not so clear, because now you got more money in the pensions, but now you got more bondholders who you owe money to. And Rahm's idea, well, we can get the bondholders to buy our junk bonds if we will promise them a future revenue. So not just future revenue, these taxes we have coming in the future, Rahm says, you know those taxes come in. There's no doubt, okay? Whether it's like a sales tax thing, which he's already done, certain sales tax revenue coming in, or now this might be government, state gives the local government certain money, although it's doubtful that you can count on that, but some stream of revenue that you're fairly sure of, and if you're a bondholder, you get first taps at that money, okay? Over the people who might want it to go into education spending or current police, that money goes to you, Mr. Bondholder, because as Troy said, and Mr. Rahm might have been right about this, not everybody has you know, if you're semi-skilled worker out there, hard worker, you're making 30 or 40,000, You're working for a manufacturing company, one of the few that are left. You're working for a service. You ain't got a mayor. That's what Troy says. I'm not saying that. Troy says, you don't have a mayor, but the bondholder, he's got a mayor because the mayor is looking out for him. The mayor's saying, you're going to get your income stream, okay? See Troy's point? So we're helping Troy out here. Okay. So that's also known as what they've been doing in Chicago for a long time. This is called scoop and toss. See, it's like being out on the playground. You're out in the sand lot and you scoop up sand and you toss it over here. We all learn how to do that, you move sand around. So you got some debt around here, these pensions, and they're not funded. And so you got to get money. So you scoop some money up from the bondholders, and then you toss it over to the people who have pensions, IOUs from the city, and then you make a securitization. That's what we call it. This bond is now secured. It's not just a regular old IOU. It's secured by money that the city can count on. And Rahm says this is great. And we've already heard this is unusual, some of the leading candidates talk about Paul Vallis, for one, is known as Mr. Education, but he's looked at this and he said, basically what I've said, what Wirepoint said, this ain't so good. Well, we'll get Paul here, get it in his words, but we don't have so much of that going on usually. The mayor speaks, the city council says, hallelujah, okay? I mean, we have a progressive caucus, we got more independent caucus, but somehow what Rahm wants, he gets. Whether you're progressive, the whole city council is Democrats. There once was a Republican, but I think he died. I don't know. So really, 40 aldermen, 50 aldermen, they're all Dems. How different can they be? Okay? I mean, they're not partisan anymore, but if you pushed them, they would tell you they're Democrats. Okay. So, so we've covered kind of finance for the city. There's more to it. We got to take a look at the $10 billion budget. And then the $6 billion or $7.6 billion CPS budget. That's almost, we're pushing $17, $18 billion going to the city of Chicago between the general budget and education. That's something worth taking a look at, Lori and Paul and Willie and Gary and Rahm and Troy and Dorothy. You should come on this show and say, hey, Jeff, you don't have to do it. I studied the $10 billion budget. And let me tell you, Jeff, what that $10 billion budget is, where the money comes from, where it goes. And let me tell you about this $7.6 billion CPS budget. I mean, wouldn't it be refreshing? I always prepare for these shows I'm supposed to tell them? I thought they're supposed to tell me. So watch, when Mr. McCarthy comes on, I'm going to be quiet as a little church mouse, sitting over in the corner, and we're going to probe a little bit, but it's up to Gary to let you know what he knows and what he's going to do, and he should be in command of all of this. And if he wants to argue charter schools are better than traditional neighborhood schools or worse or something, he can argue whatever he wants, but he needs to argue. And so does Lori. We got to get away from this okay, moratorium on charter schools, end of discussion. I don't have to show I know why they're good or bad. I just have to repeat the progressive mantra. That ain't good enough. There's a new sheriff in town here in journalism, and it's me. And I expect the person who's usually here to tell you what's going on and to make persuasive arguments and to show they've got a command and they know the data. They don't say hey, I don't know what the budget is. Really? You want to be mayor of the city of Chicago? You've got to know what the budget is. You're going to say, okay, I don't know what the crime is. I got this guy or this woman who's going to take care of it. No, we're not going to let that fly. Because Rahm ran in 2011 on fixing education, fixing public safety, that's crime, fixing finances, and that was enough. It really didn't have to go and tell you details. And that's not right. The people who, your representatives, your journalists, your media, they need to say, how are you going to do it? Oh, okay, Rahm, is your current strategy all about shot spotter? You know, you got this technology to figure out where the shots are going on in the south side and the west side, and you throw a lot of police? Okay, Rahm, here's the thing. So what did you do on that weekend of violence? You took 600 police and increased the number of police in the 4 districts that had the most shootings. And the next week, it went down to, I think, like 0 fatalities. I don't know how many shootings it went down to. Is it all those 600 police? And do you just leave them there forever? Or were you lucky and it went down? I don't know. But Rahm, that's good. That was a short-run solution. And then what is the long-term? Because we hear long-term involves jobs and investment and so forth. But if you're a voter, your politicians should be educated to know the difference between short run and long run. Basic economic concept. Short run, long run. It's not a fixed term, but you know, if you're living in Chatham or Inglewood or wherever, if you're living south and west side and you know, and you're getting caught in the crossfire and there are like, you know, 12 fatalities and maybe some person, look, just in the crossfire, one gang member shooting on another and your kid got shot, got killed, I think, and you're a friend of that person, you want to know what's happening now. It is not enough for you to say, oh, we're going to suddenly have quality schools. Number one, how do you do that? And how long does it take? And what do you do today? I want to know why it's happening, getting fixed next week. See, that's the short run. Today, next week. Short run. Long run might be next year. We're bringing in new schools. We're going to have competition. We're going to have innovation. I got a new person as the chief academic officer. I got a new person coming in on the police. And that person has a strategy. And that person has a way of using technology. And that person has a way of saying, we don't just talk about getting the community to trust police. I will show you how it'll happen. I will bring you to the meeting of the police with the community. I will bring the cameras in there. And it's going to happen the first week I'm on the job. That's what a mayor says who wants to be mayor. And he says, here is my police chief, and I will tell you about him, and this is who I want. And this is what he's going to do. I mean, that's not so hard, is it? I'm just a guy. I'm not running for mayor. And I think I just showed you Paul, Gary, Lori, Willie, Rahm, how to do it. And if I'm wrong, you just come on public affairs and you say, Jeff, you are so way wrong, and here's why. Okay? And here's why. Okay. So, a little different show today. Next week, scheduled, I hope he's here, Gary McCarthy, or our special guest who's an expert on reducing and making recommendations how to reduce violence in the city of Chicago. One of those will be here, I promise. If not, yeah, you can take that to the bank and collect interest. But the main thing is, just relax. If you're a citizen of Chicago, enjoy it, make it better. Concentrate on getting a good mayor. If it's the current, fine. If it's different, get a good governor, get good state reps, get good state senators. We'll turn to those races too. But the main thing is, you come back next week and every week to public affairs.